So before we get started, and we've got some folks live streamed on Zoom who weren't able to join us, um, I'll go through a quick itinerary as to what we'll do today. Really informal. We're going to do a presentation on some new tools that are out there specific for ice management. We know municipalities are dealing with asset management, and the treasurer and the finance director oversees and is in charge of that. But when it comes to ice operations, that's really your baby that you take care of. The ice is yours, the plant's yours. How do you maintain it? How do you provide the best sheet of ice? So we have tools to try and help you do that. And then we'll pass things over. We'll go through that. We have a really exciting announcement. We'll pass things over to Brad. Brad will talk about the ORFA, their perspective, ice management. Then we will go out on the ice and actually do an ice step check with the team here at the Sensplex. Have lunch. We'll see how long we'll keep the live stream on for. We're going to do that first hour and a half. Have lunch. Go through RFAM, no worries, and then we'll have another presentation from Ian here as well. So. It's 10 o'clock. Let's get started here. So this is going to be, again, an overview of our systems and our tools, but the idea is, how does this help you with your operational efficiency to manage your facilities? Morning. Help yourself, coffee, donuts. No worries. So first off, yeah, John.
Maybe give them an idea of how many people are here or they're from.
Sure. Do we want to kind of go through? Can repeat it, but we'll go through kind of who's in the room here, maybe how many rinks you have, how far you drove today. That would be pretty cool. Can we start here at the front?
We have one rink. We're from Barry's Bay. A couple hours drive.
Nice. Appreciate having you.
Thanks.
We have one rink. We're from Deep River. It's about a two and a bit hour drive.
Morning. How are you? Tyler?
Tyler, Town of Coburg, 2 CODs, 2,500 seat junior rink, and 3.5 hours.
Thanks for coming.
Ray Fosbury, River Frenville. We have a twin pad with junior ice. And,
Thanks for sharing.
No, for refrigerated rink.
Okay.
There's a whitewater region. We had 3 rinks, but 2 are being ran by rec associations. So we're just one this year.
Thanks for sharing.
Town of Pellwall.
Thank you. Brad?
I'll do a little introduction in this moment here too, but Brad might not before I say.
We'll go from there. Cool. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Joe Brown, there's 4 of us from the city of Pembroke. We have 2 facilities with 2 sheets of ice.
Thank you for coming, Joe. And senators? Sensplex?
Randy Watt, with the Sensplexes, we have 9 pads, 3 buildings. I drove 10 minutes to get there.
Rough traffic at that stoplight. John?
Zach Schiffer.
I wouldn't go that far. Ian?
Riding shotgun, John.
Cool. We're gonna have a great time. So, again, thank you everyone for joining. We want to give a special thanks to the Sensplex for hosting this. We reached out to them about a few months ago. They've been using this tool since about February, managing their ice, and Randy was kind enough to say, yeah, feel free, come by, invite some local rinks. We did it at Middlesex 2 or 3 months ago, kind of last minute, and a lot of the operators in the area said, hey, it's nice, we can get out of the office, we can come in person, we can chat with other operators. People are always trying to grab us to do different things. It's hard to sit at a computer for an hour or 2 to go through a session, so to be able to drive out, meet, and actually see how these tools work in person is extremely invaluable. So we'll continue to do these if based on your folks' feedback and opinion at the end of today's session. We'll continue to host these at various locations, just to get that interaction and provide some various training at a very high level. So first off, how many of you folks familiar with an ORFA logbook to do ice step checks, plant readings, flood cut logs? Okay, awesome. This here is by no means telling you throw out the book, scrap it, burn it, don't use any of the paper stuff you've done. If that's what you're familiar with and you're accustomed to, feel free to keep doing that. If for personal records you want to keep writing it down, that's completely fine. What we're showing you is something that's been in the works for honestly 7 years to get to this point to where we are today. We're getting some really phenomenal uptake with actually some of the folks here in this room that have been using this tool, and they're seeing tremendous benefits in monitoring their ice thickness, their water consumption, their energy usage, depreciation on their equipment, that trumps using the paper method if it works for them. But again, whether you choose to use it or not, these are more information sessions to show you about the value of some new and innovative tools that are out there and in the industry and practical for your everyday use. Does this look familiar? Yeah. So these are from some rinks across North America that we've seen doing their ice step checks. You go out, you fill it in, you take a trolley with you, you fill in the information, you go back, you write it down, you transpose on a whiteboard. Is this the most up-to-date reading that was done? We were talking with the rink yesterday and they said there's so much variety just from our operators as to what they choose to fill in. Might be 1 3/4 inches, might be 1.5 inches. I see 1 3/4 inches, then I go out and I say, okay, we've got to shave the ice down, but they just didn't take the reading properly. It was actually 1.25 inches. And I spent all day doing all this work that wasn't really needed to be done just because the readings weren't collected accurately. Whether you put your finger on the measuring tape, on the drill bit, you take it out, everyone has a different method of doing it. This way is to make sure that it's uniform and it's consistent across the board for every operator, for every rink, every pad, and every facility that you might oversee. This is all the way from a single pad community rink to an OHL, AHL, NHL building. The standard now can be uniform as to how you're doing it and how you're collecting it. So that brings us to the Sub-Zero software. This is based on a tool called RFAM. I'm not sure if many of you folks have heard of it. It was built in partnership with the ORFA to help you do operational efficiency and building management for your inventory and inspections and work orders. Then about 2 years ago, we were visiting Canada Life Center in Winnipeg, and they have the RFAM tool. They asked us, can we somehow put an inspection in here to do an ice step check? Just to write it in, but have a picture, have 52 points that we go out and drill and just type in those values, 1.26, 1.37. We said, yeah, sure, absolutely, that's doable. Then that started to evolve into a separate piece of software called Sub-Zero, where now we have a Bluetooth caliper. You have your custom layers. It's an interactive map with all of your points, flood cuts, plant readings, and a number of other features, all from operators like yourselves giving us their feedback as to what they use, how they use, and what they need, to the point now where we have about 200 rinks across North America using it, and we're almost in our second year of it being available, and I think we're in about 5 NHL buildings to start this season. So this is a great quote from Gary Schaefer. He was one of the first users over at Anaheim Ice. He was very keen about being one of the first individuals to get it going, and he worked through a lot of the processes to us building it and figuring out how it works. He said what he's noticed is with his staff, they're no longer just operators of machines, but they've really become caretakers of the ice because they can see the readings, they can see the trends, they can see their high points, their low points, they can upload their flood cuts, and now they're able to actually go in and pull this up on an iPad before they go out and do a flood or before there's a game and monitor all this information live, as opposed to going to a book or going to a whiteboard and saying, well, is this the live reading? I don't know, I'm tired of writing stuff down. It's become so much more simpler and intuitive for them to go out and do it. So this is a screenshot of what it looks like. You have a tablet. We'll go out and do it on the ice after Brad's presentation. We upload your custom layer. So if you have it, the graphic, we can upload it. If you don't, we can work with you, or if Jet Ice put it together for you, we can have a release form for them to provide that as well. So if you have multiple sheets of ice, what we've seen is you just have a generic rink right now. Everyone's ZAM gate or ice resurfacer gate is in a different location. They don't know where to come out from, where to go. Your nice logos aren't really on it, so they could be drilling a different spot. They could be starting a different corner. You don't really know if that data week over week or day over day is the exact same spots that they're drilling consistently. By uploading your layer and identifying where your ice resurfacer gate is, that improves the consistency of the readings that you're taking from the same spots and the trends. And at the end of the day, it just makes it simpler and easier for your operators to go out and do that work. Once that's done, they press submit. That's all they need to do. You don't have to go in and transpose it, put it on a whiteboard. It stores to the cloud instantly, and you can access it from anywhere. You can put it up on a TV. You can have it at your desk. You can have it on a tablet. An email sent out. A director and a manager can get an email and check and see, okay, it's all been completed. There's no more, did you have it? Can you send it to me? Can you scan it? Is it in the book? Was it done? Everyone's notified. Everyone knows what's going on right away, instantly. The Bluetooth caliper is really cool. So we started out with just drop downs where you click a drop down 1.1, 1.12. It wasn't as intuitive, especially if you're holding 3 or 4 things out on the ice. Now with the Bluetooth caliper, which we'll show you, You drill the ice, you stick the caliper in, you click the button, and it sends the reading instantly for that point and opens up the next point and the next point. We were at Canadian Tire Center yesterday. They did their readings, and they don't even have to look. You could technically put the iPad at the player's bench. If you know the snake routine or the snake pattern of your ice step check, it logs it all in for you automatically. All you need is the drill and the caliper. You walk up, you press submit. You can make sure that all those points are where you did and the right readings, but then you're done. You can have one staff member do it in under 10 minutes now for those 29 points that you typically do. So the goal of this is to help your staff be self-reliant, so that they log in, they know, okay, I've got my flood cuts here, I have my plant readings, I've got my step checks, I'll go take an iPad, I'll take the caliper, I can go out and do it. As opposed to, did someone do it? Where's the book? What was the date and time they did it? You'll see all the information laid out clearly, so you can be hands-off and let the staff do the work that they need to do to manage and operate that ice. Here's some pictures. We're working on getting some with proper PPE of individuals wearing helmets and steel-toe boots. We're getting to that. But here's some pictures right across North America. So in Winnipeg at the practice facility, they've got 4 sheets. One guy can go out and now do all 4 pads with just a tablet, a drill, and a caliper. He connects the tablet there to his belt loop. So he still keeps it on him to see it, but he doesn't have to hold anything, doesn't have to really press or click anything. Bottom left, Anaheim Ice. They've got 4 sheets of ice. Their ice quality has improved tremendously. They've brought down the thickness. The hardness of the ice is better. They can see the paint lines a lot more clear. They're saving a lot more. They used to do double floods every night. Now they didn't need to because their ice was so thick, so they've stopped that, save time, save operator time. They can do more in the building. They've gotten tons of comments on the quality that they're able to provide. Canada Life Center. Some people have toyed with putting an iPad not in this range of view, but out of a distracting view on their ice resurfacer. When they're going to do a flood, they can see their points. So if they're going to go do a flood, they can say, okay, we're high here, turn off the water. If we're coming around a low spot where ice is a little thin, blast the water. If we've got fast ice, different devices that can help us. There it is in Anaheim on a TV. You can have that up all time, anytime. They just walk by, you can now see right away. Green is about your 1.25 to 1.75. Blue and purple is over that 1.25 inches, over 2 inches. Yellow and red is once you're starting to get less than 1 inch. So right away you can see some problem areas you're having on your ice. Go out and deal with it on your ice maintenance days. This was actually in the news in a magazine in Middlesex. So they were really blown away by the technology they were using over there, and they actually wrote an article on it, which we're really excited about. Some rinks still choose to print it out. So this is Tulsa, Oklahoma. They print it out and still have the readings on a piece of paper, but again, the data is collected, structured, and organized, no handwriting. And the top right is the Coachella Valley Firebirds. That's RJ there. We had the privilege to go visit them. They went to the AHL Calder Cup finals this past year, and they said the Hershey Bears commented saying it was the best ice they played on all year long. RJ used this data and used the tools that he had. He said that we can share this with you to apply for the job at Utah Hockey Club as the director of ice operations, and he just got that job. So, and he's now the new director of ice operations, because he's using these tools to show how well he can maintain and manage and understands to build a good sheet of ice. And he's a young guy, and now he's the director over there at Utah, which is really exciting to see. Here's a quick video. Obviously, it's a time lapse. It's 11 seconds long or 30 seconds long, but this is doing it at one of the pads in, oh, it lagged there, in Winnipeg. So they got a 4-sheet facility. He does 37 points, but he goes through. You don't need 2 guys, no book. Presses the button on the caliper and fills it all in right away. Makes it a lot simpler, a lot quicker. So the end goal is obviously not just the accuracy and the efficiency, but also now you have complete control of your data. So your data is stored, it's accessible, you're able to check who did it, the date, the time they filled it in. A lot of the time it's, well, okay, was that the time they filled it in? Did they actually do the plant reading at 10, 12, 2, 4, 6 o'clock? There's no way of really validating that when it's just filled in on paper. With these systems, they automatically log all of that information. So you can go back and ensure, okay, are we doing our flood cut logs? Did they fill it in for today? Did they do the plant readings? When was the ice step check actually done? When someone said there was an issue maybe Someone hurt themselves on our rink. Did we actually do our ice depth check that day or the day before, and what was the level of that ice? It ensures the quality and the accuracy and the control of that data. Flood cut logs. How many of you folks track your flood cuts? Yep. What kind of information do you collect on your flood cuts?
Basically time.
Uh-huh.
And
Pretty standard stuff, right? It's nothing too complicated. 5 or 6 things you're collecting, right? So Brad and I are going to chat a little bit about this later on. We've just established last week, you were the first folks to hear about this. This feature, the flood cut log on Sub-Zero, is available at no cost as a benefit of membership to all ORFA members. So if you wish, you can log in tomorrow and you can start doing all of your flood cuts at no cost digitally. You can pull up a cell phone, so you can put a QR code somewhere in your facility, in the operation room, staff scan the QR code, they pull it up, that's exactly what you see on the left-hand side. But it's customized. So we have your area, so we know what the municipality is called, or the rinks. We have the rink's name, we have the ice pad name, and we have the name of your ice resurfacers. So if you have multiple ice resurfacers, it will show the actual name. So maybe blue Zamboni, green Zamboni, if you have a sponsor, cat Zamboni. So you're picking the exact one. It's not 1 through 5 or rank A, B, C, D. It's customized for what you need. You can put in the hours, you put in the battery or fuel percentage level. It pulls up the actual numeric keyboard. So as opposed to A, B, C, D, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can fill it in even quicker. And then just drop downs for the size of your tank. Any notes or comments, press submit. That goes to the cloud. And as you see here on the right, it then shows all of that on a dashboard. So you can put this again up on a TV, have it on a screen on your computer in your office, and you can pull up all of your cuts and all of your floods instantly and toggle and say, we want to see all the cuts for today. Here's the last 5 or 10 cuts across all your pads and all of your sheets of ice. Does this seem like a simple, easy way to start doing your cut logs and to start introducing yourselves to doing a lot of your inspections digitally? Yeah. Is this a valuable tool that the ORFA is providing that you guys would say, perfect, this is something I would use, I'd be able to log in and I can actually start doing stuff like this in my operations without needing to purchase something or spend money or get commitments, and we can actually use this as a member benefit through the ORFA. Would that be helpful for you folks? John? Yeah. You want me to do it or do you want to do it?
No, that's okay. You go ahead. Please.
You sure?
Yeah,
Okay, fine. So a lot of this information here, next year, as to some of us were chatting about earlier, the asset management requirements for 58817, we have to provide, starting July 1st, a level of service, but the level of service tied to the financials. So what does level of service mean? We're actually doing a 5-week course right now going through this. But the first component is you have technical level of service and you have customer level of service. So the customers, what's the target of quality of product we want to provide to the customer? So we want to have 12 hours of ice available, and we want the ice to be at a certain quality, and we want the dressing rooms to be clean, we want the facility to be clean, and those are 3 to 4 various ideas. On the technical side, what do we need to do to provide that level of service? Well, we need to make sure we clean the dressing rooms twice a day. We need to make sure we have the ice flood properly, that we do inspections on the dashboard so there's no screws popping out. We need to variety of different inspections that you do, including your flood cut logs, and then tying that financially. So what's the cost of a flood? If you reach out to Marty at Zamboni, we've done some work with him on this where he can actually, based on your region, based on your cost per water or kilowatt hour, they can determine the cost per flood if you have an electric or a propane ice resurfacer. And based on how many cuts you're doing, some buildings we're seeing are doing in Sub-Zero 170 cuts a month, 10 cuts a day roughly on average, and let's say roughly $5 per cut. That can be almost $1,000 a month over a year for one sheet of ice. It could be costing you $10,000 in water usage and water consumption. So again, by having this data, let's say you folks want to switch to an electric ice resurfacer, but your municipality is saying, oh, it's $20,000 more to get an electric ice resurfacer. When you have this data, you can say, look, these are all the floods we're doing. This is the cost of water. This is how much consumption we're going through. It makes sense to switch over to an electric machine by having that data, being able to make those decisions. If you have it on paper, if you don't even have it organized in the first place, it'll be very hard to defend your stance when we're requesting funds to make critical upgrades. John, anything you want to add on the level of service?
How does that tie back to the plant and the efficiency?
Sure. So the hours on your compressor. We've seen some rinks that are over 3 inches of ice that we have. The hours on their compressors are running over 20 hours a day. We know there's other components about outside temperature and so on that play a factor in that. But just at a high level, when they brought that ice down to 1.5 inches, you see those compressor hours go down drastically. And then the useful life of that compressor is extended because it's not going to need to be replaced now in 5 years. We can extend that now by maybe closer to 10 years because those hours are now closer to 7 hours a day. The oil usage, the oil consumption, there's a lot of valuable things. You're already collecting all this information. We're not trying to change anything you do in what you're collecting. We're trying to give you a digital option to do it so that then you can see trends and analytics on the work that you're already doing. You already have so much data. The Acrisure rink that we were sharing with you, he started using the flood cuts in April. We've made changes and adjustments, but he's almost done 1,000 flood cuts in our system in about 4 months. The kind of data we can show, there's about 100,000 gallons of water that he's cut, or gray surface snow, or that he's cut from his 2 sheets. Or sorry, that was just from 1 sheet over a 4-month period. Again, if you have that written down, you wouldn't realize some of this consumption that you're using or some of these trends. Through the ORFA, through the now available to access the flood cut logs at no cost, you'll be able to run some phenomenal reports on your water, your snow consumption, and the hours on your ice resurfacer, the depreciation on it, which we're really excited to get going and have you folks start using. Questions, comments? No? Okay. So there you go. Now available. ORFA member benefit. You can email us, reach out to us. We do have a site online where you can actually fill in your rink name, your ice resurfacer name, how many pads you have, so it makes it easy. We can get you set up. Training on these things. Tyler, how long was training to get you guys set up on Sub-Zero?
Half hour.
Yeah, maximum. Canadian Tire Center, we went to go train them last week over Zoom. They said, we're already set up. We know what to do. We've got the caliper, we've got the iPad, we've got our layer. We started using it last night. So, okay, what's the point of the meeting? Oh, we just wanted to chat. To use an enterprise asset management software is complicated and a lot of work, and setting up inspections and work orders and inventory and life cycle planning. To do your ice management, 20 minutes, a half hour. You're familiar, you're comfortable, it's what you're already doing, just on an iPad. So here's some of the trends and reports. If you have multiple sheets, I heard some of you folks here do, you can compare your ice thickness. You can see it over a period of time. If it was above 2 inches, 3 inches, now it's come down to that 1.5 inches. Let's track it across our multiple buildings or our multiple sheets, make sure we're all uniform across all of them. Your compressor hours. If you have a fancy building automation system, that's completely fine. If you don't have a building automation system, and you still want to be able to run some sort of trends, by collecting your plant logs, which again, you're already doing digitally, you can now see those trends and compare those hours and overlay your ice thickness with your compressor hours for that plant that's associated to that rink. Your water consumption, that's just 1 month of data. Now they got about 4, but you can see how much they flood versus how much they've cut. Zamboni told us, he said, you got to do water to water. So we actually did a melt test where we took 5 single-gallon pails of snow coming from the ice resurfacer. We left it a few days and we saw it melt down to about 50% reduction. So we can now compare water to water. Again, we're not telling you right down to the exact gallon of your usage, but at least it's giving you a very strong ballpark as to where you're at in your consumption, if you don't have fast ice, level ice, and some of these other tools. Your compressor hours over a period of time. And this one here in the bottom left, I don't want to start touching stuff, but if you can see, you'll have compressor 1 through 3. If you just fill in 2 plant logs in here, we'll know your current runtime hour, obviously, and your average hours per day. The more you fill in, the more accurate it will be. And we can forecast your next upcoming life cycle event. So 3,000, 6,000, 9,000, 12,000 hours. When does the oil need to be changed? When does a top-end inspection, full rebuild, your next oil change? Because different compressors, different hours, one's a backup, one's a lead, you can then start to budget and plan that without being overly dependent on your refrigeration contractor. And now you have the data to be able to determine what needs to be done. This one here is really cool. So compressor 3, you know, I will move this out of the way. If you guys can see, compressor 3 has about 1,500 hours less than compressor 1, but it's used just a little bit more than compressor 1, and it's used almost an hour more than compressor 2 per day. So if you see the next upcoming life cycle event, it's 3 years behind compressor 1, but that extra hour per day slowly starts to catch up if they're not changing the order of their compressors. Now you can see they all need to be replaced in the exact same year. They'll all hit 60,000 hours in the exact same year. If we look at just the hours itself, we walk up to the machine or we go on our interface on our computer and we pull it up, it looks like, okay, 1,500 hours less. We're going to get a few more years out of this. Maybe not, because it might be used more when it's actually running. This is the kind of data that you don't have to sit in a spreadsheet and do all these charts and fill it all in. The software does it all for you just from the data you're already collecting. So these, John, yes.
So we've heard examples right across Ontario with a number of municipalities, so we deal with a lot of the treasurers and the CAOs. And with regards to the asset management side, what's happening is your treasurer, your CAO, they have no clue what the difference is between a pump, a compressor, a condenser, or a piece of pipe. And if you look at their asset management plan, and I can tell you we've reviewed them, most of them have not detailed their plan to the point of component. And what's happened is you get situations where something breaks, they didn't account for it properly on their asset management plan because they never came back to you and asked you for advice, right? And then you guys all know the situations, you know, the roof is leaking. Well, why didn't you tell us? Well, we did tell you, you just didn't understand what we were telling you. So this now what we're doing is when we're talking to treasurers and CAOs, we are encouraging them more and more to actually engage and involve the operation people before they make decisions, before they go to council. And these are the tools that are going to help you to validate the longevity of the assets that you own.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
So, and for what John mentioned, these are the 4 key points that we've kind of thought about that really drills down on why are we doing this and what's the importance of using Sub-Zero. This is it. Maintain consistent ice thickness. If you're already at whatever you want, 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, perfect, maintain that. If you're got multiple sheets and it's hard to monitor and manage all of them, this will help you to be able to do that. It'll reduce your water and energy consumption, as we already shared. That rink that has the 4 months worth of data, they're still doing the same amount of cuts. They're doing about 170 cuts every month, but their water consumption has gone down. Some people always assume that, okay, a full tank of snow and a full tank of water is the exact same. It's not. They're 2 completely different sizes. So just because I did a full tank and a full tank doesn't mean anything. So by using these tools, we actually have those sizes in there as to, okay, what's the capacity in gallons for the snow and the capacity for wash water and flood water together, and what does that actually mean? So now back to that. Actually, I'll go back here. This report here, the second one on the right with the line chart, that is how much is being flood versus how much is being cut per day. And you can compare this and actually do it by operator. Not that we want to shame anybody, but use it as training. So to say, hey, you're consistently cutting actually way more in terms of gallons than you're actually flooding. And you might be saying our ice is actually 1.5 inches. That doesn't really make sense because we're not flooding more, and also our consumption of our user groups. This is all the trends that then you can use to elevate your staff performance and get the most out of it and provide the practical training that they need. Reduce water, extend the equipment useful life, as we mentioned, and increase operational efficiency. Just make access to information, understanding how to properly maintain your ice and provide the best sheet of ice possible. So this is what RJ shared with us: to strive to have the best ice possible. We want to have the best ice. Sub-Zero helps make that possible. Is this the only tool you need to have great ice? No. It's one of a component. So if you have your ice resurfacers, you have your level ice, your fast ice, perfect. Keep using it. This isn't to tell you scrap those, this is all you need, but this is another tool in your toolbox to give your staff the outlet to make sure your ice is operating at the highest possible quality. Some people say, hey, I've got a laser leveling machine. Do I still need to do ice step checks? Even Zamboni and Olympia still say, no, you still need to do your ice step checks. Doesn't matter if it's still laser leveling, you still need to do that, just even from a legal liability perspective. Unfortunately, there are some rinks that don't do it, but with tools like this, we've actually been able to motivate some to go out and do those ice step checks, take the caliper, click the button, fill it in, spend those 5 minutes. They don't need to block a half hour or an hour out of their schedule to do it, and start tracking this data. So that's the first batch of our presentation. We'll go more in depth and we'll talk more about the value behind it, but we wanted to give you a quick introduction to what it is, why you're here. Any questions, comments, feel free to jump in, but otherwise I'll pass things over to Brad. But John, you got a comment?
We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Sure, we can take a 5-minute break. Yeah.
One thing you didn't really talk about, in my perspective, comes from right across the continent. There's
Sorry, who
always,
are you?
I'm the other guy to heckle from the market. So we're in the valley. So we get in full pose, right? You know, okay. So, but there's always new operators joining, facilities now. And so this kind of information can really help bring people up to speed to see what they're doing well, what they're not, because you've got an actual, feedback system in place. And that would be very helpful for anybody going forward, because we are seeing lots of people new to the industry, and sometimes the practices are a little dodgy. So numbers keep you honest.
Thank you, Ian. Before we take a break, Randy, guys at the Sensplex, do you have any comments you guys might want to share from your use of the tool and what you guys have seen?
So far, I think we're still relatively, we're 5-6 months into it. It's actually, you gotta do it, right? That's the first thing, is schooling everybody to do it. It's an amazing gadget. And one thing that nobody's mentioned so far is liability. I have a story, if you give me 10 minutes some time today to tell you about that.
Sure.
This is a true story, and it's pretty scary. About liability, about thickness of ice, right? And
Yeah, absolutely.
anyway, it's real. This is not phony. We love it, and we're all in here. We're gonna push the limits here. We want to do everything.
Awesome.
So
Yeah,
that's too easy.
Thanks, Randy. So yeah, so we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll pass things over to Brad. We'll go out on the ice. We'll have a quick bite. Then Randy will do a little bit of a presentation for us, that 10-minute session that you'll go through. Okay, perfect. You guys even better. And then we'll have a presentation from Ian. Thank you, folks. We'll take about a 5-minute break here.
Hey, we'll get started here. I think we're good for folks online. Hopefully everybody can hear and see me okay. I am going to stand versus sit, just personal preference. But yeah, thanks to Zach, John, Marmac for having me here today, having us here, the ORFA. So yeah, just here to talk briefly with you before you do the on-ice session. From the majority of the room here, I see a lot of folks that I know are members. We've got a member of the board, past member of the board in the room. And for those of you online, probably pretty familiar with the ORFA, but I will give a kind of a brief overview of who we are and what we do, just to tie into some of the other conversations here today. And then we'll talk a little bit about ice maintenance management best practices as well. And as Zach mentioned, kind of some exciting news, and we'll talk a little bit about an event that we're hosting too, and how this all kind of ties together. So without that, we'll get started. If I can toggle my screen here. There we go. So just before I get started, I'll just introduce myself briefly for those of you that don't know me. My name is Brad Putnam. I'm the Information and Skills Development Coordinator with the ORFA. I started in this new role with the association in April of this past year, after close to 15 years in municipal recreation facility management, primarily between the city of Burlington, as I kind of started my career after educational experiences, and then my last 7 years in the city of Peterborough, with my last year's overseeing the facility and park services profile, with a number of facilities ranging from the operational piece of our Memorial Center in Peterborough, the OHL facility, community arenas, and a variety of other recreation complexes. So much like kind of the responsibilities and things across the room. Here today, obviously to speak as kind of my new hat and with the ORFA, but just giving you that brief introduction on myself and kind of my background, where my experience comes from, which was in that time primarily in recreation facility management, but also in some asset management for part of my time in Burlington with our capital works department as well. So today we'll just briefly, as I mentioned, talk about the ORFA, who we are, what we do, kind of our connection with Marmac and that partnership and things, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of our resources. We'll take a little bit of a quick snapshot of history of ice maintenance and some things in the past, and talk a little bit about some resources and things that we have. And then again, we'll kind of give a snapshot, and I've left a handout with those of you in person, and we can certainly get it to those of you that are online as well, just into our 2025 symposium event as well. At any point throughout, I'm going to keep things relatively quick just to keep us moving, and I'm sure everybody's going to be jumping out their seats to get out on the ice to do this demonstration. But at any point throughout, just ask a question, and Randy, maybe I'll ask you to share that story that you have, because we will talk a little bit about and I won't put you on blast either, but we will talk about those kinds of things of why you do ice maintenance and the reasons why it's not just an operational tool, but from a liability standpoint and best practices on that. So again, the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association, not-for-profit, created in 1947 as the Ontario Arenas Association. Since that time has expanded into the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association as it is today, supporting kind of the four pillars that we have members, over 8,000 members now, in a variety of different settings, from municipal operations, private operations, educational, First Nations communities, and then we have industry and business members as well. So the association has definitely grown from what it started as, and focused on primarily the arena and the ice side. Now includes on top of the ice and refrigeration, buildings and grounds, aquatics, and then the staff and management components as well, as part of those four pillars that we focus on. Vision is to be the leader in the recreation facilities profession, and how we do that through our mission is to provide leadership in the development of innovative training, education programs, value-added services, quality products for the benefit of the recreation facilities profession. So everything that we do as a not-for-profit association goes back into the membership. So those of you that are members, and if you're not, or those of you online that may not be familiar, everything that we do and what we create as far as professional development programs, events, resources, some of which that we'll touch on here in the coming slides and minutes. Everything that we do goes back into the benefit of the recreation facility industry. So the relationship with Marmac started in 2016. It's now closer to 8 years with math, but that relationship has really, as kind of Zach talked a little bit about RFAM, but has resulted in the creation of multitude of leading asset management resources and solutions. So RFAM being kind of the flagship of that, and creating that, and the access to the inventory module on that to assist with asset management, as that's started to become such a significant topic over the last decade and beyond, and certainly is obviously with regulations and other things becoming a little bit more detailed. It's still there and has grown into multiple other modules and things, as Zach talked about, that can help with your reporting and life cycle analysis, incident reporting, inspections, and things of that nature. But the RFAM module and inventory is kind of where it started, and also work hand in hand with Marmac on a number of different resources and things that we do. Their involvement as a professional development partner as well in a number of our courses and events and things of that nature. So just a brief history on ice maintenance. Definition, as explained in our ice maintenance and equipment operations course. So ice maintenance is a systematic approach to the creation and upkeep of a sheet of artificial ice in a controlled environment. So it sounds pretty simple, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide, I believe. But you know, it's not that simple, as you're all very much aware. But fundamentally, that's the striving goal of ice maintenance in an arena environment. So one of the main things that started when we talk about depth checks, you're here today to learn more about the innovation and things with tools like Sub-Zero. But one of the things for those of you that aren't aware that kind of started, and this is where we talk about liability and other things, was the John Stein accident, which was in the town of LaSalle in 1988, where an incident occurred where he pretty violently connected the dasher boards, and ultimately that was through either a rut that was created or is penetrating the ice surface. And with that, ultimately there was a lawsuit by the family, the Stein family, versus the town of LaSalle, and ultimately they were found liable under the Occupiers Liability Act for not having industry best practices and things in place. And not to pick on them, and in one of the resources that I give you, it certainly outlines that just the way things were at the time there was certainly much different than today. And things definitely evolved from that time, and the ORFA was involved in that incident and looked at of what the association was providing as far as best practices and things, and the refrigeration and ice making manual at the time was looked at as a best practice resource in that case. So that's kind of an evolution of the beginning of the history of performing ice steps, but also typically originally the ice steps benchmark was created based off refrigeration capacity. So typically an engine room was designed in order to accommodate and maintain a certain thickness and a level of ice. So versus the safety component, which it obviously evolved into, and the ORFA has been a part of taking next steps forward and into helping educate and bring new products, services, and things on the subject to the forefront. But originally, it kind of started more from those aspects and efficiency and things of that nature versus the safety component. But obviously, they're very much hand in hand, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And just a reminder, the ORFA used to provide, but for some time has not provided the direct recommendation in regards to the 1.5 inches that's traditionally kind of floated out there. Ultimately, there are industry best practices, but as an owner and an operator, that needs to be determined on what your internal policy or practice is on your ice maintenance depth. Ultimately, there's a variety of factors as we talk about kind of the multitude of uses now of arena facilities. There's a number of more specialized uses and other things where figure skaters and sledge and other types of sport, but also multi-use environments where arenas and facilities, not just multi-sport entertainment type centers, but community facilities that are starting to kind of do a little bit more as far as conversions and events and things of that nature. So, carrying the thickness of ice that's appropriate for that is something that has to be determined on a case-by-case basis, and even a building-to-building basis for those of you that have different facilities. You may have aged versus new and different capabilities of your systems and your facility as a whole. And then just depth at the end of the rental is the key. So you have your kind of internal policy and where you want it at the start of your rental. The goal is to have it the same at the end of your rental as well. So your common trouble areas, and this is something, again, that's obviously discussed in a lot more detail in our ice maintenance and equipment operations course, but I'm sure all of you know the traditional areas, whether that's through the middle and your low points, your high points and your corners, the benefit of and the consistency of edging and things at your benches, your gates. There's a variety of different common trouble points, areas of focus. Obviously, with practices and tools and things, you can monitor and improve on that. And a big component of that as well, which we'll talk about, is operator skill and things. But there's a variety of factors. So when we talk about previously in a controlled environment, it's controlled versus an outdoor application. Having said that, there's a variety of things that can affect that, from, again, your building's performance, your systems, your HVAC-R, again, staffing, use, the different users and things. So there's a lot of things that go into these kind of traditional, typical things. And it sounds simple, but it's not a simple practice to master. So guidelines and best practices. So really, the theory of having an ice maintenance day, it's not just a day, but it's an attitude. And we were having a conversation with one of you earlier here just about the limitations that you're seeing now with more and more consistency in demand from users, and kind of that traditional time that you may have had in a non-peak or a non-prime type of access to your facility is now being booked 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and just the demand is certainly there, and that's for a variety of different factors that we won't get into today. But your ice maintenance isn't just a day, and the continuous daily activities. So inspections by operators and opening and closing throughout the shift. Evaluating your ice conditions. The ice equipment operation. So again, when we talk about not just the machine's performance or the tools and things that you have with the machine, which have obviously evolved as well, but the operator's competency. And Terry talks about it a lot. Driver versus operator, and there is a difference between driving around in circles versus being a skilled, competent operator. So those all play factors into your ice maintenance outputs, and obviously the quality of your ice conditions. So recording your activities. So one of the things that obviously we're talking in depth about today and looking at with Sub-Zero. So industry best practice is no less than once per week. I think that's probably well understood by most in this room. You can do it more, certainly, depending on, again, what you have happening with your facility. Obviously more if you're having troubled conditions or things like that. And regardless of floor type. So I'm not sure, are there sand floors or anybody in here with older different applications? No, but regardless of the floor type, no less than once per week continues to be industry best practice. Key point on that too, pre and post maintenance, ensuring that those readings and recordings are documented, and anytime a repair is made. So it's one thing to do the ice depth measurements once a week, but if you don't act on those, you don't show the recordings of known problem areas, high, low, damage, patching, and things of that nature, then that's equally as much of a liability as not doing the depth checks themselves. So ensuring that you're recording what's done when there's observations that might not be up to your standard is a key piece and takeaway. And then as we've talked about, and again, I'll throw it over to you if you want to give your example. And we talked about the Stein case and kind of how it's been one of a foundation of how things have moved forward. But these are part of a series of documents. So in addition to other things like Zach's talked about, collecting your plant readings, your machine checks and circle checks and things like that, your flood cut logs, all of that is things that would be looked at in the case of a claim or a lawsuit. And so obviously these are not just operational best practices, efficiency tools, they are a liability tool as well. And good ice maintenance, it is good asset management. So again, if you're controlling your ice conditions, then obviously your plan is maybe going to be more optimal, efficient. Your building conditions would be improved as well. So controlling your arena environment, it's just good asset management. It'll help you meet those life cycles, and the tie to asset management is there, and kind of the ongoing operations and maintenance. And when you talk about tools, again, ice equipment has significantly evolved with level ice and water management systems and things of that nature. But when we talk about the operator competency too, it's you can have all these tools and these technologies and things, but if the operators don't know how to use them or use them properly, then the tools are useless. So it's all tied together in regards to how you're given these tools, you're given these assets, and then the daily and the ongoing maintenance, and having good programs and plans in place as part of your asset management. It's all interrelated. So I've left it as a handout here, and again, for those of you online, we can, or if you're ORFA members, it's as a benefit of membership available through our resource library, but have handed out our artificial ice skating upkeep and maintenance guideline best practice resource, and it goes into a little bit more depth as well. And just building on that, so when we talk about working on ice, obviously there's risks and worker safety. We have a few resources on that, which I haven't brought today, but just knowledge. This is the obvious things, but the workplace specific knowledge of the risks and the hazards in your work environment is paramount. Knowing what personal protective equipment is required by the employer, the traditional footwear, head protection, eyewear, hearing protection, whatever it is, anti-slip, those types of things, they are certainly something that the worker needs to be aware of, and is given the tools to do the job safely and efficiently. And again, that workplace specific training and knowledge is the key thing. So knowing the environment that you're working in is paramount. And again, we're kind of covering some broad strokes on some of these subjects here today, but as far as what we offer as the ORFA in our professional development, for those of you that have taken this, can certainly allude to the more detail that's included in our CIT and our IMEO courses. But the ORFA has set the industry standard, and the CIT is recognized by the National Hockey League, and is industry recognized as a professional designation in the industry, one of 7 that we offer as the ORFA. So again, a lot of the things that we've kind of really briefly touched on here today, how that ties into the overall subject of the event today, and things that's covered more in our IMEO, our IMPT, and then the refrigeration side through BAR is covered under the CIT professional designation. And when we talk about the operators and the operators' attitude to the craft of the craft through their conduct as a reflection of the industry, ensuring that you're investing in yourself and that you're investing in your staff to provide them the education, the professional development to be more competent and efficient, and continuously learning, evolving with the technologies and things is definitely a key, and ensuring that that ultimate ice quality being the kind of the end goal of all of these pieces of the operation is something that is a focus and is a reflection of the team. It's a team of staff and individuals involved in that, but fostering that and showing that through your conduct is definitely a reflection on the industry and on the professionals. And then lastly, again, as another handout and as kind of a tie to all of this, just a snapshot here today on our 2025 symposium event, which is being held October 6th to 8th, 2025 at Pan Am Center in Markham. This is in partnership with Marmac, Ivy Story, and others. We're talking a lot about facility environments, conditions, asset management today, as I'm sure you've seen in some of our communications and advocacy, really raising the subject around this, because this is a critical time for the industry. And this is not just isolated in the province of Ontario, it's across Canada, North America, internationally. We're seeing more and more stories and things about the challenges with this subject, with aging facilities, the challenge in capital investments and things like that from budgeting standpoints and things, and how that's going to potentially affect the industry if awareness isn't provided. So the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association is taking the leadership on really highlighting that conversation, and it's part of our strategic focus is to provide that information and awareness, and participated at events like Association of Municipalities Ontario this year to really advocate to those in more senior positions and make sure that awareness is out there at that level, and in addition to yourselves and those kind of directly involved in the day-to-day more intimately. So more to come on that. Information should be provided later in regards to the agenda and registration and other things, but just a snapshot of that event that'll be coming up next year for those that are interested. And that's it for me, and I'm happy to take any questions, or I don't know if the Muppets in the back have any comments or things, but no, I appreciate everybody for the time here and online for having me today. But yeah, floor's open, and happy to answer any questions or open up conversation. Yeah, Randy.
You say that you don't recommend ice thickness anymore?
Not specifically. So the old recommendation has been offered for over a decade in regards to that, but industry best practices are still mentioned in some of our courses in regards to that. But you know, determining that that thickness is an internal responsibility based on your
So
operation.
is that something that ORFA could do, is maybe do a check with everybody to see what they run there and then publicize that this is what most rinks are using?
It's talked about in a little more detail, like in IMEO, about community facilities being no less than an inch. And kind of that the standard like no more than 1.5, but again, like your site specific facility capabilities or policies is going to be dictated on your use and ultimately what's a comfortable standpoint for you and your organization, your risk management group, your employers for what you're carrying. And again, there's the aspect of the legal, the risk side of it, but then there's also your efficiency and that side of things as well, right? So there's traditionally kind of those guidelines, but ultimately it's up to facility managers and staff to figure out where your set point is.
So that being said, on Sub-Zero, you guys don't use a recommendation or the optimal points.
50/50. So we still have, that's where we originally started with the colors, and we had it being very narrow. It was like just 1.5 inches pretty much. Then we started to open that up to be 1.25 inches, 1.75 inches. Are we saying from a legal liability for ice is thicker that that's bad? No, but you're playing in the amount of water, being able to see the lines. It's not optimal if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, obviously. And under 1 inch, as Randy will talk about, that's where you can start to have some issues. Like I skated on an outdoor rink once, and it was near the spring, and part of the ice was gone. Like it was right down to the concrete. So we tried it. Some people like the visual perspective. Okay, this there's a little bit there. This is a little bit thicker. We are going to offer the ability to see how level your ice is, not just how thick it is. But the last major thing that we're thinking that's important is some folks like the colors. It's just a quick way of viewing it. Some say, hey, I'm colorblind, I can't see it. Some don't like the colors and they just want to see the numbers. So you can toggle between which option you want, but over there.
John? I think the thickness, there was a slide before that spoke about safety and operation. So really it's a matter of, can your plant support 2, 3, 4 inches? Are you running it at a peak efficiency? And then as long as it's identified, as long as it's a standard, and as long as you maintain that, and normally in the municipal environment, there would be policies and bylaws that somebody would approve. So if you say this is our policy and this is what we approve, then that's one aspect. To answer Randy's other question, over time, as we gather more and more data, the intent is to make that available back to the user community. So as a collective group, you guys can come up and say, here's what we want to do, right?
I get the whole lawsuit thing, and you guys don't want to be sued, nor does ORFA. But years ago, it might have been 1.25 inches, and that was ideal. And now, because of fear, and basically to hell with efficiency, it goes to 1.5 inches, just for that reason, right? I think if you fooled everybody in this room, I think that probably everybody runs their ice a little bit thicker nowadays because of that reason, right? But I think that I don't want to be rude, but ORFA being who they are for the members, I think it'd be a great idea if they schooled everybody and asked everybody, what do you run? And this is what, I get the whole lawsuit thing, and that's why you're not publicizing it, right?
Well, I think and I know you have your hands too, but obviously, again, the policies, whatever your internal policy is set, the strive and the goal to maintain that, because that's where the issue can lie, right? Too is if you're not maintaining that, whatever that policy is, then that's where there can be discrepancies. Also, again, if you're running significantly more than whatever that safe condition is, then you're gonna tax and overwear and kind of affect the life cycle of your equipment and your system. So there's a ton of variables, right? So it's not a simple subject to just say we're gonna be here and then it just miraculously is that. There's a variety of factors, absolutely, in that. So, good conversation, good comments, and we can
Your floor comes into
floor apps, yeah.
like how well that floor got built or how not well that floor got built that you've got to work with, that will have some influence on where your minimum can be. And that was one of the things that's tripped up, okay, what's the number?
Yeah.
Because, you have high and low spots in your concrete now. It's, that's pretty common that you end up with, having to have a different, number for this sheet versus that sheet. It's kind of the local knowledge that comes on site.
And that's absolutely a factor, and that is discussed more in some of our programs. But that's part of the environmental conditions of the facility, not climate, but that's an environmental condition of the facility and its capabilities or limitations. I think Joe, you had your hand up first, and Zach.
With my little bit of experience with the municipal asset management program, it's been 4 stones. Trying to say that.
Tell us how you really feel.
It's a benefit we're doing, and especially in our operation, we're finding that it's giving us the teeth that we need to make improvements in our facilities. We're finally getting acknowledged that we have deficiencies that need attention. But part of that is the standard of care that will be documented in that final document for July 1st next year. Part of that will be ice measurement, specific to a facility. In our case, at least, we will have a document that we will have ideal ice thickness is 1.5. That will help us determine that going forward for infrastructure replacement, compressor lines, that type of stuff. All this will definitely be an asset for our asset management buying into this program, knowing this information. But to Randy's point, everybody's facility is different. Of course, we all know that. I was kind of shocked last year when I realized the association didn't get the standard in the training programs. I understand the process of what this is.
So sorry, we got a question in the chat.
Okay.
An individual online is asking, is ORFA membership allowed if you live in the States, always looking to further knowledge and connections?
So
Yes,
are they?
yes.
Yeah, they can reach out to ORFA in as far as accessing the programs and things. However, the US IRA offers the CIT program. So we have a partnership with the United States Ice Rink Association, and if you're a member or not a member there, that's kind of where you would go. But we can help navigate you. Whoever's asking that question, sorry, I didn't catch the name, but whoever's asking, we can help you out with that inquiry as far as accessing the resources or professional development. So.